Now this is a video that I've wanted to make for a while now, ever since I started doing the top 5 games to emulate on certain systems, and if you haven't seen the other videos I've done on this topic, go check them out. I've done NES and Genesis. But ever since I started making these, I've wanted to do Super Nintendo, because Super Nintendo is by far my favorite system to emulate for. There are so many fantastic games for the Super Nintendo, and Australia really got gypped on them. We didn't get so many of the fantastic Super Nintendo games that people got here in the NTSC region in North America. And I'm talking the best games for the system we missed out on. So I've wanted to do this video for a long time, but every time I get around to making it, every time I make the list, the games I comprise always end up being super typical. Super typical games that you're probably sick of hearing about time and time again. So typical, so super typical in fact, that you could probably even say that it's Super NES typical. Now I'm going to start with best PAL game to emulate. Now this is for those of you in the NTSC regions, or heck, to be honest, this game is so expensive and rare even if you're in a PAL region. This is a game that only came out in Europe and Australia. And if you're really involved in the emulating community, or you're a retro collector like myself, you have probably heard of this game a ton of times, and that game is Terranigma. Terranigma is an action role-playing game released in 1995. It was published by Square Enix, or just Enix at the time. Terranigma tells the story of Earth's resurrection by the hands of a boy named Ark, and its progress from the evolution of life to the present day. It still kind of blows my mind that Australia and Europe got this game and North America didn't. The game is such an unforgettable experience that you need to at least try once, whether that's through a repro or emulation or however you can get your hands on this gem. Next up, best NTSC game to emulate, a game that only came out in North America, and as I said, there is an entire catalog of these games that I could have picked from. So many games, a stupid amount of high quality games, but I went with Bebe's Kids. Voted best game for the Super Nintendo 3 years in a row, 1994, 1995, and 1996. Bebe's Kids is probably the most fun you can have with your Super Nintendo. Okay, I'm kidding. Friggin' sucks. I recommend emulating that game just to see how bad it is. Do not pay for that game unless you're going for a complete collection, and even then, feel free to skip Bebe's Kids. That game is terrible. It's really bad. It came down to a few choices for me for the actual best game. It really came down between Chrono Trigger, Gradius 3, Kirby's Dream Land 3, and Super Mario RPG, and that's because as an Australian, as I said, some of the games I couldn't wait to get my hands on when I moved to the States. But there's so many more that I'd recommend emulating, especially if you're in a PAL region and haven't played most of these games. For the sake of mixing it up on this list, I'm not going to pick Chrono Trigger because it is so close to Terranigma and one of the other games that I picked. And I'm going to go with Gradius 3. Gradius 3 is a scrolling shooter video game that was released in 1989, developed and published by Konami. The game was originally released for arcades in Japan and other parts of Asia on December 11th, 1989. This game is one that I didn't have as a kid, but I found recently and I fell in love with. It's really addictive, and every time I pick it up and play, I can smash out a couple hours and be glued to my screen the entire time. It's definitely a game I'd recommend playing, and it's something that you can play in short bursts. It's kind of hard, but maybe I just suck at it. Okay, now for the rarest game, I think I'm kind of cheating. This is technically rare, but it also doesn't technically exist. I'm going with STARFOX 2. STARFOX 2 was to be the second in the STARFOX series and a direct sequel to the original STARFOX game. The game was scheduled to be released in summer of 1995, but later on Dylan Cuthbert explained why it was never released. The reason for the non-release was that the Nintendo 64 was intended to be released a lot sooner than it actually was. Miyamoto decided he wanted to have a clean break between 3D games on the Super NES and the 3D games on the new superior 64-bit system. And while no English version of the ROM actually exists, an unofficial fan translation patch was released to work with the newest version of the leaked ROM images. Now this is one that I'd recommend emulating for, I would think, pretty obvious reasons. It's something that not many people have played and never actually got the chance to play, but it's a full working STARFOX game, so if you're a STARFOX fan, it's kind of a no-brainer. Now I said I was throwing a curveball on this list, and this is it. This is the one that's a little bit random, and I'm putting this on for two reasons. One, the bracket here is expensive. What expensive game should you go out and emulate? This one is also kind of a really rare game to find. But I'm putting it on the list not so much because it's a great game to go and emulate, while I do think it is actually pretty fun, but it's a game that I actually hold close to my heart for really weird reasons, and that game is Super Noah's Ark 3D. Super 3D Noah's Ark is an unlicensed Christian-themed video game that was actually released on MS-DOS as well, and that's how I played it initially. It was produced by Wisdom Tree Games and released in 1994. The game plays very similar to Wolfenstein 3D, but the graphics were changed to reflect non-violent themes. Instead of killing like Nazi soldiers in a castle, you play as Noah and you kind of just slingshot things at sheep and make them go to sleep. But I actually kind of like it, and I like the cool slingshot upgrades you can find throughout the game. Maybe if I tried playing the game for more than a couple hours, I wouldn't have much fun with it, but I don't know. It's not a bad game, and I'd recommend checking it out just for the comedicness of what the game actually is. Finally, we have my favorite game to emulate. Now, I say favorite game to emulate. I'm not sure why I'm saying favorite to emulate, because I've actually never emulated that game. So let's dive into what this game is, and then I'll explain to you guys why I put this on my favorite to emulate list, having not ever emulated it. And that game is EARTHBOUND. EARTHBOUND, known as Mother 2 in Japan, was released in 1994. It's a Japanese role-playing video game co-developed by Ape Inc. and HAL Laboratory. I'm fairly positive most people listening to this would have been overexposed to this game at this point, and if you somehow haven't been, and you're actually watching this with the intent to emulate something, I don't want to say anything more about it because this game for me was an experience. I know a lot of people think it's overrated, but for me, it was just such an experience. From the moment you start playing the game and you get hit by the visuals and the sound, and the overall feeling that the game throws you in from the moment you start playing. It is such a common game for how expensive it is. Yes, you're not going to find it in the wild. If you do, congratulations. It's possible, it's out there. But I just don't think it's going to happen. So it is uncommon, but it's common in the sense of every convention you go to, every game store I go to seems to have one copy. Conventions have more. I know there's a store near me called Mostly Music that has like 4 copies of it right now, 2 in the big boxes. So it's not like it's an incredibly hard game to find, but it is really, really, really expensive. And so many people are like, is it good? And the people that have played it are like, it's okay, or they love it. For a game that's so expensive, that is right there, that is available for you to go and buy, it would be good for you to test it first. It would be good for you to try it online, to try and emulate it, to see how you feel about it. If it's something that you like, then it's not too hard for you to go and pick up, assuming that you're friggin' Scrooge McDuck and can afford the 200 bucks for the game. If you watching this, if you end up emulating any of these games, please let me know in the comment section below and let me know what you think. Like this video, be subscribed to LaunchBox if you're not already, and I will see you in the next video. I like doing these, they're fun. I'm sorry that these games were so Super NES typical. I fucking ram that joke into the ground, and I'll see you guys next time. Also, I bought this shirt like a year ago, and I really, really friggin' like it, but it's really tight. It's kind of like my washing day, and I had like one other shirt that is like really baggy, so I decided, screw it. I've been like eating right lately, I'm gonna try it, but I kind of feel like it's way too tight, and I'm aware that it's way too tight. I'm very aware. I don't need that in the comment section below. I am very aware how tight this shirt looks and how doughy I'm getting. Very aware.